A time when families are at their most vulnerable and they're turning to somebody for support, someone that normally you would trust, a nurse in a neonatal unit. I'm sure this is harrowing for everyone to listen to, but for parents, it must just be particularly awful.
It's just utterly harrowing and so difficult to comprehend. A nurse in her mid-20s at the time murdering 7 newborn babies. I'm just reading there, she's already been described as one of the most prolific child killers in modern times in Britain. These parents and children, you can't imagine what they're going through, but I'm reading there that there were parents of twin boys that she murdered, and them saying that she acted very coolly and calmly just before she did this. It's just difficult to comprehend, Ruth.
The entire thing is completely harrowing and impossible to understand. I mean, quite literally inexplicable. And it remains to be seen whether we will have any kind of mitigating circumstances from Lucy Letby when it comes to time for her sentencing. It's very, very difficult to see what sort of mitigation might be put forward for her, and particularly just brutal at a time when families are at their most vulnerable and they're turning to somebody for support, someone that normally you would trust, a nurse in a neonatal unit. I'm sure this is harrowing for everyone to listen to, but for parents, it must just be particularly awful. And of course, the question now turns to how this happens. Families have been calling for a public inquiry to try and find out exactly why she wasn't detected sooner and why her crimes weren't stopped sooner. So this, of course, for the jury, for the police who were involved, for the families, for absolutely everyone who was involved, having a result like this hopefully will be some kind of comfort. But the next step is trying to work out what on earth happened to allow this to continue.
I think that's right. In those words that I used earlier about difficult to comprehend, who would actually think that someone was capable of this? Who would think that these things could be done in such a manner? The different methods that we've heard, absolutely horrendous. Injecting air into newborn babies, poisoning newborn babies with insulin. I've just read there, and I hadn't realised this, that 2 babies that she injected insulin into survived, and one of those babies has got brain damage. The whole thing is just really difficult to fathom, and it must have been a very difficult crime to actually solve at the end of the day, because, as we said, you just can't work out why somebody would want to do this, never mind the circumstances of it.
I mean, if you have a look at the finer detail of the case, it is just traumatic, relentlessly traumatic to read about, to try and comprehend what some of these families will have been through. We've talked about twins, we've talked about triplets. There is just something about the loss of this child's siblings that you wonder how these families are ever going to heal. I mean, they won't heal. I've been a court reporter for a long time. I've sat through some very traumatic cases and reported on them. Nothing is as appalling as this, but when you speak to families afterwards, this is something that they don't move on from, they often don't heal from, and the ramifications of this will last for decades. It's so difficult, as you say, Ruth, to try and put this into words because it's just so appalling, and the detail that we've heard over the last few months has been absolutely incomprehensible.
And I think that's probably a direction of travel that things will go in. That having been said, again, I'm just reading in terms of the comments that have been made about this case that the police are now investigating other incidents involving other children in other places where Lucy Letby had placements before June 2015 to see whether she harmed any children there. I'm just reading of certainly a couple of complaints that were made related to hospitals that she had worked in.